Okay. Alright, so today I'm going to show you guys kind of just a quick overview of how to use Photoshop. And we're going to go over how to place an image, specifically a basic piece of line art, and so then you can easily color that in Photoshop and kind of learn the basics of how to use it. But first, I kind of want to go over real quick the general rules, the general layout of Photoshop, sorry. So up here you have the entire toolbar up top here, and those are regular, just like almost all Windows programs. You have File and Edit and that kind of stuff, and then the whole bunch of original ones for Photoshop, and then Window and Help, and we'll kind of go through a couple of those real fast. And then down the left-hand side, you have all the generic tools for Photoshop. The ones we're most interested in are the Paintbrush tool, which I have selected currently, the Eraser tool, the Fill Bucket tool, which may look like the Gradient tool. You just have to click and hold, and that will allow up a couple different options, and then you can let go on the one you want. We might use the Text tool, that's up to you. And then down here, these are our color tools. So these allow us to select colors. So if I double click on that, it brings up this little dialog box, and I can change to whatever color I want. Click OK. And you'll notice there's two of them here. I can switch these back and forth, so I can have up to two colors going at once. And some brushes use more than one color because they have like a foreground color and a background color. So that can change things too. Then over on the right hand side, you have the color picker. This is just a quicker way of choosing color. If you really like a color, say, oh man, I just really love that blue and I want to use it over and over again, you can actually add it to your swatches here. That way you can get that exact same color again. And it's pretty easy. You just click it over, you just grab it from this side over here and drop it in over here. And that should get the job done. Now, down below, down here, this is actually rather important. There's nothing going on there now, but this is the layers panel, and that's where we're going to do a lot of different things. Now, your layout should look like this. This is the Essentials layout. If for some reason it doesn't, you can click up here in the top right hand corner and choose Essentials, or you can go Window, Workspace, Essentials, and that should make it look just like this. As you get better with working with Photoshop, you can adjust it to the way you want. Like you could choose the painting window, and you'll notice that changes this up a little bit. I actually really like the painting window. It has all the stuff that we want to do, so we're going to stay with the painting window, but I wanted to show Essentials first so you had a workspace to start from, but I'm going to stick with this painting workspace because it gives a couple of things that I want and a couple of things I don't want. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and show how to start a new file. So it's pretty simple. You just go File, New, or Control N. And then we are going to use US paper for today just because it's simple. If I click on this, there's lots of other different options. I could go default Photoshop size and go US paper and all this kind of fun stuff. Or you can choose your own size. I can change the width and the resolution, all that kind of stuff. But we are going to go US paper size with 300 pixels per inch resolution and a white background. Click OK. And there we have our piece of paper, basically. Okay, so we have our piece of paper. So now what do we got to do? Well, we can start painting. From here right on out, we can start painting. If I go over to the right here, you see there's the paintbrush, and I can choose to use that. Now, a couple quick things about the paintbrush. If I click on it, it has a couple of different options, like the mixer brush tool. Now, I notice this a lot. People get stuck on using like weird different brushes and stuff. Stick with just the brush tool to start with. This is like the generic tool. And then up here in the top left, right next to the paintbrush, is where you choose the different types of brush. You just click on this little drop down arrow, and you have all these different options to choose from. At the top, you have these kind of regular brushes. We're going to say that they're regular for like Photoshop and stuff. And then you can scroll down, you get different kind of texture type brushes and stuff. And then even at the bottom, you get some kind of like picture brushes. It's kind of cool. We'll play with those a little bit. Now, each brush, whoa, that's big, comes in like a variety of sizes. I can change the size right here. So that was max size right there, but I don't really want that. all the way down to 1 pixel. So these are the amount of pixels its diameter takes up. So at like 75 pixels, I get a little round brush like that. And then the hardness is the relative like shape of the edge of that brush. So if I have 0% hardness and I draw, it has a fuzzy edge, and I can zoom in on that and show that to you. You'll see it has a very fuzzy edge. However, if I change that to 100% hardness, you'll see that it has a not fuzzy edge. And so that is the difference between soft and hard. So the hard edges are really good for like doing, maybe like you wanted to draw some really tight line work or something, while the fuzzy edges are really good for blending and stuff. Photoshop also has the ability to change pressure sensitivity and all that kind of stuff. So you notice that the first 2 brushes were just basic like you would think. You change the size and it draws that big. But these next 2 actually have a pressure sensitivity set to them. So where if I press using a tablet very lightly, I get really small lines, while if I press hard, I get thicker lines. And these can both use the size and hardness scale. So I can have a really hard edge line that goes thin to thick. And this might be very good for drawing. I'll zoom back out here. So that's kind of the gist on brushes. Now I am using a tablet, and the tablet does have buttons on it, and one of the buttons is a right click, and I can right click and I can change all these settings from just right clicking in the middle of my painting. I don't have to go up to here every time. There are also things like changing the opacity, so basically how transparent a color is or isn't. And so if I were to have multiple colors and stuff, it would change how light it is and then let other colors show through it. And then flow is the amount of, like, if it's like an airbrush, it's like the amount of paint you're throwing down. I don't use flow too much. It's usually just opacity or not. And then there's a lot of other different brush settings. You can edit the presets of your brush to do a lot of different things. All these different things can change stuff. From thick and thin to being different, like it can be opacity. You can change that to pin pressure. So if you press really lightly, it's basically transparent. If you press hard, it becomes opaque. You can change all these crazy different things in Photoshop. Right now, if you want, you can try and play with some of that kind of stuff, but that's kind of more advanced stuff. That's not really where we want to be at today. Couple quick things then to note is we now have a layer down here in the background layer. And what layers are is by clicking this small little icon down here that says create new layer, or by going up to the top left here and clicking layer, new layer, or the shortcut shift control N. All of these options create a new layer. And these layers are basically transparent pages on top of your white background page. And so I can create a whole bunch. I can click on them and give them names like, I don't know, awesome layer. And then on the awesome layer, I could say paint something that's green. And you'll note when I paint something that's green, on the awesome layer, which is on top of our background layer, the green thing goes on top of the blue stuff. If you scroll in, you see the green is on top. And then if I were to change this to red and go to layer 3 here and paint something, you'll note it's on top of the blue, but underneath the green. And that makes sense because it's above the background layer, but below awesome. And so that is how you get you can get like layers of color that way. And these are not set in stone. I can move them around. So if I put awesome under 3, 3 becomes a head, all that kind of fun stuff. And if I just don't like one of my layers, like 2, I don't need it, I can just drag it to the little trash can and get rid of it. You can also change the overall transparency of a layer by using the opacity dialog, which changes the whole thing to more transparent or not. You may or may not use that. But yeah, so that's the gist of working in Photoshop. So now I want to show you how to place an image inside of Photoshop and then how to use it to kind of basically create your own coloring book inside Photoshop. And this is just to help you get used to coloring and working with the tablet and just kind of get used to dealing with Photoshop. So I'm just going to go ahead and go File, New, and make a new document. And we have our nice little background layer over here, and it is locked. This is what this means. It means it's locked. It means I can't change it. I can't move it. I can't really do much to it. I can draw on it, but that's about it. I do want to change that, so I'm just going to double click on that and click OK. So now it's just a layer 0 that's not like blocked or locked in or anything like that. So when creating a coloring book, normally you have to color inside the lines. Well, on the digital application, we can color inside the lines, or we can color underneath the lines, which makes a lot more sense to me, because then if you mess up, you can erase your color, but you don't erase the line. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to we're going to get a picture from the internet, and then we're going to place it in Photoshop, and then we're going to be able to color underneath the black lines. It does need to be a black and white image, no grays, that kind of stuff. I mean, it kind of can work with grays, but it's much easier to work with black and white. So what I'm going to do is I went to Google here, and I Googled line art, just for something simple. And we got a whole bunch of different examples of line art here. Something like this one won't be the best because of these gray pencil marks. The gray won't come out quite as nice as we want, but a lot of these, all the rest of these work great. Like, as long as they're just solid black and white, they look great. This one might be okay, but this gray might come in a little odd. So let's just choose, and something like this one that already has shading on it might not be the best. You want to kind of choose something that is mostly black and white. And you do want to get a good quality image. If it's blurry at all, like this one kind of is, you don't really want to use that because, well, it's blurry, and you want nice, clean, sharp images. So let's see. Let's just see if this tiger is good. Yeah, the tiger looks good. So I'm going to click View Image here, and see that I got a slightly larger image. So then what I'm going to do is right-click on it, Save Image As, and then I am going to save it to my desktop, which is just an easy place for me to get to it. And it's a JPEG image, and I can change the file name to Tiger Line, and click Save. And so what that did then is saved it to my desktop. So if I minimize all my windows here, and you'll see it right here in the center of my screen, that's my new image I just saved. Yes, I have a lot of things saved to my desktop. It's a bit messy. So back into Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to go File, Place, Embedded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that image we just saved off the internet into this document. Okay, and I'm going to choose Desktop because that's where I saved it at. And then somewhere in this list of files, because I have a messy desktop, we'll find my Tiger JPEG. So I click on it, and I click Place, and that places in there. And you're like, oh my goodness, it's blurry and has these lines across it. That's fine. This is basically Photoshop's way of handling it so that it doesn't have to deal with it until you actually place it in. So I can at this point move it around to place however I want, and that looks fine. And then I just check this little check mark right at the very top, and it clears up. So awesome, we have our line art in here. Now, the way Photoshop deals with things like this is they're going to make it a vector image, and I actually need to rasterize this. And I know these are terms that you probably don't understand, and that's fine. We'll talk about those later or in a later class. But go to your Tiger line or whatever you may have called it, and right-click on it and click Rasterize Layer. And so now that basically means that we can play with it and edit it, okay? So in the bottom right-hand side then, under our layers, you'll see we have a background layer, or a layer 0, and our Tiger line. We're almost there to start coloring. I want to create one more layer in between our background layer and our Tiger layer, and this is the one I'm going to color on. So let's go ahead and say color layer. Cool, now we have a color layer. And I am actually going to go ahead and lock this layer, this white layer, so that I can't edit it. So once I lock it like this by clicking the little lock, even if I try to color on it, it's like, no, you can't color. So can't color on there anymore. Now, last step. I now need to make it so that this tiger is transparent, but not the black. Because you'll notice right now, if I color on my color layer, nothing happens. It is happening because if I remove my tiger layer so I can look through it here, there is color there, but I can't see through the white background of my tiger layer. So how do I fix that? Well, I can change the layer's mode. And by changing its mode from like what it's normal, where white is opaque, black is opaque, I can change it to where white is transparent and black is opaque. And by doing that, I can then make our fine, fancy, dancy coloring page. So what I'm going to do is clicking on the Tiger line layer, or your whatever layer it is that has your image on it, and you'll see this normal right up here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go to multiply. And so what multiply is going to do is it's going to change it from white being opaque and black being opaque to just black being opaque, and all the grays in between being varying levels of opacity, and then white being completely transparent. So we'll change it to multiply, and boom, it worked! Yay! So now we can see that pink line underneath. So I'm going to take my eraser tool here, and I'm going to erase my pink lines because that was messy looking. And then I'm going to grab my brush, and now I can start coloring. So I can make this tiger whatever colors I want. So obviously it's kind of a tiger, so I'm probably going to start with orange. So I'm going to grab some orange color. I'm going to get kind of a large brush, and I'm going to start painting. Now, one thing I should note is you don't want to draw on this layer. That's going to mess stuff up. So lock that layer. That way you cannot draw on it. Once it's locked, remember, I can't draw on it. So that's good. So lock that layer. That way you can only color on the color layer. And so I'll go back in here, and now I can color away and color inside the lines. I can use my navigator window up here to zoom in on areas that are really tiny so I can see better. It's like, oh, I missed right here, so I can kind of color this in a little bit better. And I could use the fill bucket tool too if I wanted to. I just, for whatever reason, don't want to right now. And I'll just color in my entire tiger. Now, you can do solid colors like this, or you could do more complex colorings, like kind of giving it values and shading, just like a real painting. So if I wanted to, I can change this maybe to like a lighter orange, and then I could change my brush to maybe having a nice soft edge, something like this, and then I could lighten it up and kind of put some lighter color, and then I could maybe choose this color and choose some color in between to try and blend those together a little bit more. And you'll note that, man, that's not blending very well. And that's where this opacity kind of thing comes in. So I can lower my opacity down real low and kind of slowly start to transition these two together. Something kind of like that. And then I can pick up maybe this darker color here, and keeping my opacity really low, kind of blend those two together. Just a little bit more like that. And so we can start to get our cool three-dimensional tiger. So yeah, that should be about it. When you are done with everything, make sure you save it. You should probably save it right now. You should save your image. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So we'll go File, Save As, and then I'm just going to save to my desktop again. But you want to find whatever folder you want to save it in. You should probably save it on your network drive, which would be right here for me. But I'm going to save it to the desktop for this computer. And so you can change your name of it. So I would say Tiger Line Coloring Project. And then I'm going to save it as a PSD right here. And what that saves it as is a file that you can come back in, open it back up. It has all the same stuff the same way, and you can continue working on it. So I want to save it as a PSD first. So I'll just click Save, click OK. And then you'll note on our desktop, we have our Tiger Line, which is the one I just made, and then my Tiger Line Coloring Project. So cool, we've got those two. Now, when you're done with it and you want to hand it in, you don't want to save it as a Photoshop at that point. Well, you still do. You want to keep one for yourself. But to hand it in, you don't want to hand it in as Photoshop, because a Photoshop document can only be opened by Photoshop. We want it to be opened by any computer, kind of like this one. So what you would want to do is go File, Save As, and you'd have the same name, same place and everything, but instead of PSD, you click this drop-down arrow, and you have all these file types to choose from. And it's like, which file do I choose? It's like, what are all these things? Well, most of them, let's just say that they're not useful for you right now. The one that you want is JPEG, JPEG, right here. JPEG 2000, but not JPEG 2000, just JPEG. So I'm going to click JPEG, and I'm going to click Save, and then I'm just going to go ahead and choose medium. This is the size of the JPEG, the quality of it. So I'm just going to choose medium, click OK, and then you'll note that here is my tiger coloring page right there, and now it's openable by any computer. It doesn't have to open up in Photoshop to see it. And so that's how you would go about handing it in. But if I open up this one, it should bring up Photoshop. So that's the gist of what you guys need to do. If you want to change your image, you can do that. If you want to draw your own, you most certainly may. You can draw it on paper, and then we can ink it in pen and then scan it and place it in Photoshop. It requires quite a few more steps. I suggest for this first project, we just try and just learn how to color. And if you really like it, you can come back and do your own project in Photoshop that way. Otherwise, that's kind of all I have for this project. So get to work, make some painting, do some cool art.